Welcome right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating paradox called real versus perceived speed. It's an incredibly deep dive into what actually happens when cold, hard, objective technical data completely clashes with our messy, subjective human experience. So I want you to actually pause and think about this for a second. Is it really possible for a technically inferior system to feel faster? Think about it. How can a computer architecture that is objectively, measurably slower according to the data somehow feel significantly faster to a human being using it? It sounds totally impossible, right? I mean, if a car's engine literally has less horsepower, it shouldn't feel faster off the line. But as we'll see, in the wild world of human-computer interaction, the rules of the road are very, very different. Okay, so to really understand this paradox, we first have to look at the reigning heavyweight champion. For a long time, the author of our source material was absolutely convinced of one solid fact. An operating system called EasyOS was simply unbeatable. Designed by Barry Collar, it is essentially a masterclass in efficiency. We're talking about the absolute pinnacle of doing way more with way less. It truly represents one of the smartest, most advanced desktop Linux architectures ever put together. Okay, let's dive into this engineering because it's brilliant. What makes EasyOS such a powerhouse is exactly how it avoids system bottlenecks. It uses a very specific, highly optimized architecture, featuring things like PUP Mode 6 and advanced RAM overlays, to actively avoid writing data to your physical hard drive, which, is relatively slow. Instead, it does all its heavy lifting directly in your computer's RAM, which is lightning fast. Throw in some highly optimized SquashFS into the mix, and you've got an operating system that is engineered from the ground up for pure, unadulterated efficiency. Now, if we look at the raw benchmarks, it's essentially perfect. Just look at this. 10 out of 10, straight down the board. RAM execution, disk write minimization, overlay efficiency, its lightweight philosophy, and its internal architecture, all flawless. From a purely objective, data-driven standpoint, EasyOS is an unbeatable, highly efficient machine. The benchmarks prove it, the system logs prove it, it is literally textbook perfection. But then, plot twist, the author decided to build their very own custom environment. It was an unexpected challenger they named XFCE FUSILLI, and during hundreds of hours of grueling side-by-side testing of this new setup against EasyOS, they hit a total wall and realized something profound, something that changes how we look at this completely. Real speed and perceived speed are not the same. Wait, what? Despite EasyOS being technically superior in every measurable way, FUSILLI simply felt faster. And this brilliantly illustrates the great tech mistake we've all been making, our total obsession with cold metrics. Machines measure raw data, right? Boot times, RAM consumption, CPU cycles, disk throughput. But us humans, we don't benchmark our laptops with stopwatches, well, unless we're having a really weird Friday night. We benchmark sensations. When a normal user sits down at a computer, they don't say, wow, this overlay file system has an excellent architecture. No way. They say, wow, this is incredibly smooth. The human brain basically interprets smoothness, continuity, and a total absence of friction as pure speed. We just want things to feel effortless. Which brings us to XFCE FUSILLI and the absolute magic of continuity. When the author set out to build FUSILLI, the goal wasn't to win synthetic benchmark tests or top a leaderboard. The goal was to maximize visual ergonomics. They wanted to create an environment that was cognitively comfortable, an environment that aggressively hunted down and reduced friction. They basically wanted the desktop to transmit this incredible feeling of lightness directly to the user. So how did FUSILLI actually pull this off? Well, mostly through what might seem like super minor details, but are actually profound psychological triggers. We're talking about microanimations, incredibly smooth transitions between different states, seamless window continuity, and a carefully designed sense of immediacy. By ripping out the harsh, abrupt, jittery cuts on the desktop and replacing them with fluid visual cues, the entire daily experience was drastically altered. The system wasn't necessarily computing the underlying data any faster, but it was serving the results up to the user's brain in a way that felt absolutely immediate. Now, you might be wondering, doesn't all this visual flair just chew through my battery and hog system resources? Because the old school thinking in tech is that more visual effects equal worse performance. If you want a fast system, you got to strip out all the animations, right? Actually, scratch that. Look at FUSILLI's resource cost right here. It uses roughly 1.6% of the CPU and a microscopic 0.3% of RAM. This completely debunks the myth that visual fluidity inherently drains your hardware. A well-optimized visual flow actually enhances the performance experience, and the impact on the system is almost totally insignificant. Let's bring this down to earth with a practical, super relatable example from the source material, the Firefox effect. This is where the whole theory just became undeniable. When the author opened the Firefox web browser in this new FUSILLI environment, it suddenly felt absolutely instantaneous. It wasn't just about the app launching quicker, it felt like it opened sooner, navigated sooner, scrolled better, and responded to every click instantly. Sure, having a great network connection helps. The author's network ping was clocking in at an incredibly low 6 to 9 milliseconds, with blazing fast download speeds. But here is the real secret. That network is objectively fast on any operating system. However, when you combine that fast network with FUSILLI's optimized, frictionless user interface, the feeling of that speed is heavily magnified. The UI isn't getting in the way of the data at all. It's presenting the data the exact millisecond your brain expects to see it. So what does this all mean? It all comes down to this absolutely crucial point. Was this newfound speed totally measurable by a computer? Well, not always. The raw CPU benchmarks might still lean heavily toward EasyOS. But was the speed evident in real, daily, practical use? Absolutely. In human-computer interaction, the perception of the response is almost as important as the real response itself. If the computer does the heavy math in 1 single millisecond, but the screen takes 10 milliseconds to clunkily draw the window, your brain registers the entire system as slow. Let's look at the final showdown, and here the paradox becomes crystal clear. In pure technical architecture, EasyOS rightfully holds onto its crown, scoring a perfect 10 over FUSILLI's 8. It executes in RAM better, it minimizes those disk rates better, but look at the bottom rows. In visual fluidity, daily experience, and the all-important wow factor, FUSILLI dominates completely. It scores perfect 10s where EasyOS is sitting at 5s and 7s. EasyOS absolutely wins the cold, hard technical spec sheet, but FUSILLI undeniably wins the daily human experience. Which brings us to our profound final thought from the author. Users do not experience architectures. We experience sensations. I want you to really think about that the next time you are tweaking your own setup, or buying a new device, or even writing a piece of software. Are you just blindly chasing numbers on a spec sheet, or are you optimizing for the actual living human being sitting in the chair? Technical speed is incredible, for sure, but in the end, it's the human sensation of speed that truly wins the day. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this makes you look at your screen just a little bit differently today. See you next time.